Hello world, Christian Truther here, and I've got another video for you today, but it was not the video I planned on. Initially it was going to be another interview video, but this time with someone who didn't agree with me. Now, before I really get into everything, let me restate the rules. One, I am going to tell you the truth, and two, I'm going to be respectful. I'm not going to name call or disparage or anything like that. Guys, I respect you. Please respect me back, and others in the comment section. We're all human beings. We all deserve respect. I'm seeing some name calling. I'm seeing some bad things that I might have to start, blocking comments, and that would be bad. I don't want to be heavy-handed about this. So please be respectful with each other, and please give me an honest and open chance. Give me the intellectual honesty to perhaps convince you. So anyway, as I said, I was going to interview a guy who did not agree with me, and it sounded like we were going to be able to work things out, but then he got very hung up on a particular topic. And to put it simply, basically he said that part of the heliocentric model is not just the shape of the planet and orbit and everything like that, but also that the sun came first and then the earth came after. And I told him, yes, in the Genesis account, the earth comes first and then the sun. But for one, that's not part of the heliocentric model. The heliocentric model, the idea that the earth is round, and then eventually the idea that it orbited the sun, that traces its roots back to 250 BC. The concept of a cosmological timeline is about 100 years old. And you really can't conflate the two. That's revisionist history. And second, a cosmological timeline is not contradictory to the shape of the world being round. Nothing about the order in which things were created points to a shape. And so I told him, feel free to bring it up, but I don't see a contradiction. And I'll tell you as such on the video, this really didn't sit well with him, and tried to hammer things out, but it just would not work out. So I'm going to issue an open challenge, guys. If you're willing to be respectful and open and honest, but disagree with me, I'm willing to do an interview with you if you want to do that. So I'd love to have someone on there who didn't agree with me, that we could actually discuss this and try and hammer things out. Also, I'm going to issue a challenge. Put what you, if you believe that the world is flat, put what you most were convinced by in the comment section. I may have already covered the topic, but put whatever it is convinced you the most that the world was round. Drop it in the comment section, and let's see if maybe there wasn't some sort of confusion there or anything like that we can work out. Everything has an explanation for why people believe the world is flat, because the world is indeed round, and I've got so much evidence for it. But let's actually talk about it. I challenge you. Put what you consider to be the most convincing thing down in the comment section. Now I'd like to do a couple of addendums of things, other videos that I've done that people have commented on that I didn't cover in any video. In my first video, there really wasn't anything that wasn't covered later on. Principally, people were concerned about what the Bible said, and I covered that in my 10th video very adroitly, pretty much everything that was said there. So there's really nothing for me to go over there. My second video was on satellites, and I had someone bring up helium, that NASA is the #1 recipient of helium, which is actually not entirely true. It's the US government who gives it to NASA and the military and individual scientists and private contractors, because helium is really insanely useful. It's lighter than the air properties, but it's also non-combustible nature, and its nature to not want to be combined with other things. It's a very non-reactive substance. It has very unique properties when supercooled. The guy did a Nobel Prize winning research on that not too long ago. So this is all things that that helium is very useful for. So it really makes a lot of sense if you want to displace all the air in an area so something doesn't blow up. Helium. And then obviously there's the lighter than air properties, but his contention was that we're using helium for satellites. Well, that doesn't work for a number of reasons. Principally is that the world record for a helium balloon flight is less than 7 days. And that was very, very recently that record was set. Also, we can't really direct helium balloons. We can't, make them hover. We can't send them on paths. We certainly can't have them orbit the planet like 15 times a day like ISS. And we don't see them on the ISS. We can see the ISS, but we don't see any balloons attached to it. So all these things kind of combine to say, no, it's not It's not helium that's keeping things up there. Um, NASA 55 years ago put up the first geosynchronous satellite. Um, and so, unless they had something that they figured out 55 years ago that no one else has ever figured out, no private person has ever figured out, you really have to stretch the credulity a lot in order to get to there. Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot going on that helium just does not explain at all. In my third video, I talked about satellite data. I had a lot of people say that all satellite photos are faked. Well, actually, my brother covered that very adroitly. Why some satellite photos look kind of weird, and so I highly recommend looking at that. But that was principal concern there. My gravity video got a lot of comments, but it was principally from someone who had conducted his own gravity experiments and thought he figured out that gravity didn't exist. And I showed him that, unfortunately, his measuring device was not up to measuring changes in gravity. He was basing it off of the sun and the moon's pull being on one side of the planet when lined up on a new moon versus when the Earth rotated. And I showed him what, mathematically speaking, should be the pull, and then what his scale could measure showed that it was very far separate. He was missing like 2 decimal points on his scale. So we went further and further and further into that discussion, and I told him how he could measure it. I showed him some videos of gravity actually being measured, and that's kind of how that one boiled out. There were a couple other comments, but I handled those in other videos, so that was the principal difference on that one. Now, my fifth video was on curvature in water, and I had someone who brought up a time lapse that maybe you've seen of Skunk Bay. And if you search Skunk Bay time lapse, you'll be able to see this one as well. And I pointed out that it wasn't atmospheric aberration that was making the peninsula disappear about halfway into the video. It was a high tide. If you look at the timestamp on the video, and then you go back and you can check out tides for location, and you can see historically what they were. That information's available online. And there was a high tide right at that point where the peninsula largely disappears. And it was a fairly large high tide too, several feet. So there's reasons, there's explanations for things that confuse us otherwise. No, it wasn't atmospheric distortion causing it to disappear, and therefore, he was equating that to my video. No, it wasn't that. It was actually a high tide that was eating up a large portion of the peninsula that was jutting out towards the water. Let's see here. My sixth video was on southern air travel, and strangely enough, that one hardly got any comments. I did have comments asking, how come planes disappear, if GPS is working in the southern hemisphere. That's a whole different subject, and I'm actually going to tackle that very shortly in another interview video, so stay tuned for that one. But really, by and large, that was ignored by anyone who disagreed with me, because you couldn't really refute it. Pretty much ditto for the sun movement and the star movement videos, and so that kind of brought us around to my last couple of videos. There was a lot of discussion about the Bible, and I'm going to bring it back to this point and leave it to you guys for this. You must read the Bible contextually, which means you have to see what it says at a specific time in its complete context, the entire chapter, and also what the rest of the book is saying. So if one part of the book is saying that the world, has 4 corners, and another part says that it's round, maybe it's speaking metaphorically. And maybe you should take a look at that. When it says the world is hung upon nothing and the world has foundations, maybe there's metaphorical speech going on, and maybe you should take that. And I covered all this in the video, but people just could not seem to understand. I got the verses that I pointed out that seemed to possibly be supporting a flat earth view thrown back at me a lot. Nothing really else. And ignoring the other verses that I showed. Guys, if you're not willing to take the Bible contextually, not willing to read the entire thing, you can create schisms doing what's called proof texting, where you're looking at the Bible just to prove your point and ignoring anything else it says. You have to take it in its whole. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're mishandling the Word of God, and that just doesn't work. So, this was my video that was not the one I intended to make, but again, I'm going to issue the challenge. If you want a video with me, let me know. We'll try and work something out. And if you want to let me know what you guys think was the most impressive and most convincing argument for why the world is flat, let me know that as well, and let's see if we can hash something out respectfully. Give me a chance to actually convince you that maybe I'm telling the truth, because I am. I'm very earnest and open and honest about this. A lot of people like to throw shade at me and say, "Oh man, you're afraid," and I can hear it in your voice. And no, I'm not. I'm not. The truth will set you free. The world is round, and let's let that truth set you free today, guys. This is Christian Truther, signing out.